Being a single mom and doing it all by yourself is brutal. Learn the brain and energy tools to get back to your center and overcome your challenges. Welcome to Single Moms Doing It All, the podcast to help you practice what I call struggle-free parenting. This is Muriel, your host, and this week we are going to talk about expectations. This is a topic that was inspired by a Facebook post that I saw in a group for moms raising teenagers. And when I saw that post, I really felt the impulse to record an episode to help moms who are in the same situations, or similar situations, I should say. But before we go there, I want to thank you for being here every week. I'm immensely grateful to you. And I want to ask you, if you haven't done so yet, to go review the podcast and so rate it on iTunes. That way it helps us go higher in the ranking and for more moms to be exposed to what I'm publishing here every week. The other thing is, if you see moms who struggle or even moms raising teenagers, share the podcast with them, because no one needs to be alone while facing challenges. It's not fun, not at all. So our subject today: are you expecting too much from your teens? The post that I saw on Facebook was a mom venting, and that's fine. I mean, sometimes we need to vent. She was venting about the fact that she puts a list for her teenagers. I think she had one that was a teenager already and another one who was on her way. And there was a chart, some kind of a chart or a chore list on her fridge. And she was irritated with the fact that her teen was lazy and was never doing her chores. And she was asking for advice if other moms were running in the same problems, to see what they have tried successfully. So to me, it raised a big flag, because, as you know, my background is in finance and accounting, and like her, I love being able to do lists and put check marks next to it once I've dealt with whatever I need to analyze or address or do. Unfortunately, in life, it doesn't work this way. And especially not with teenagers. I know, because I went through that. I went through the frustration, and I go through that with my clients regularly, with my one-on-one clients, because we deal with something. Let's say we set a rule, or we implement something, and we think we've dealt with that, and here it is reappearing another time and another time. And it may be frustrating, because it gives you the feeling that you keep on dealing with the same thing over and over, and it can trigger us in so many ways. As you know, I don't know if I announced it in this show. I think I did. I'm getting certified to do clinical tapping, clinical EFT, and we talk a lot about triggers and layers of triggers. And this is a topic where I can see several layers that can be triggering. So today I wanted to invite you to ask yourself powerful questions, as usual, to go and dig within to see what the triggers are and how you can intervene. And about intervening, join us. If you're not in the Facebook group, join the Facebook group, Single Moms Doing It All. You just have to answer 2 questions, because you need to be a mom to be part of this group. I have a few dads too, so you need to be a mom or dad. And we're going to do this coming Friday. We're going to do an EFT session, a short EFT session, and an exercise to desensitize the triggers if you're dealing with something similar where you have expectations and you keep being disappointed because your teen is not acting based on your expectations. And before we do that, I'm going to ask you to reflect on the questions here, because really it's clear that it can be frustrating to raise teenagers. But another thing is clear too, is that without doing it intentionally, in many cases, we add oil to the fire. And then we wonder why we have wild fires over and over and over, conflicts, arguments, etc. So here, in this case, the first thing to ask yourself is, what is your expectation about that specific matter where you keep running into the same problem? What are you expecting from your teen? And to be as clear as possible, because when you are clear, you can explain it to them, because this is one of the reasons why sometimes things are not done, because we ourselves are not clear on what we want them to do. And they need to understand exactly what is expected of them without any ambiguity. Otherwise, it's not fair to them. And not only without any ambiguity, with consistency. We cannot expect situation A on one day and situation B on another day. And that's not only for teenagers, that's actually for any relationship. We need to have consistency on the rules of the relationship. So what is your expectation? Then what happens? Let's say you, like this mom in the group, you expect them to do that chore weekly, and it's never done. You always have to repeat it 20 times, and it's always, yeah, in 5 minutes. Believe me, that happens in my house too. Then, when that happens, either the yeah in 5 minutes and you're already triggered. It could be because then you have an anticipation of it not being done, because that's what you've learned from past occurrences, that when they answer that way, they're going to forget and you're going to be disappointed again. So how do you feel in that moment? Either when they answer like that can be your trigger, or when you come home, let's say they have to do it on Fridays, or they have 3 days to do it, and it's not done on Saturday. What are you thinking then? What's your first thought? What comes to mind? Is it they are lazy, they don't want to do it, they don't respect me, they don't obey me, they won't do that for me, and it can be a range of thoughts that, if you're conscious about, it's amazing, because you can only heal what you know. So what is your thought then? And if you have to pause the podcast to really ask yourself, because if you want to work on the trigger, you really need to work with it. It's like anything else in life. If you want things to change, you're going to have to put some action. Things don't just happen. And even though I believe in the law of attraction and law of alignment, there is still an action that comes into the picture. So if you really want things to change, you have to change. Your disco ball has to turn a little bit so that another facet in you is active. And if that's the first time you hear me say that, I always describe us as disco balls, because we have many facets. And depending on what facet is active in us, the dynamic between us and the outside, us and other people, us and our teenagers, will vary. If you come with a dynamic of I'm irritated and I'm ready to already be in a mode of I'm going to scold you, I'm going to punish you, I'm going to whatever you, they're going to feel it even if you don't say a word, because that's what's active in you. We feel each other. I'll have some shows about what I'm currently learning because it's fascinating. The human body and the human energy is, on a scientific level, fascinating. On a spiritual level, like I talk about energy all the time, and that's also science. Depending at what level you emote what you feel, you will vibrate at that frequency, and it's like being in an elevator and pushing a button. So if you push the button of I'm annoyed, I'm irritated, you're going to stop at that floor, and every little thing is going to add to the mix of your irritation. So that's really important to be really, really aware of that, because even when we think that we are the recipient of someone else's behavior, we still participate in it at one level or another. So what do you think when that doesn't happen? Or do you even think, yes, I was right, they never do it? Pay attention to the never and always, because those are triggers. When you tell to someone you never do that, or you always do that, it can be extremely triggering, especially for teenagers. So how do you feel then? What's the emotion that you're feeling? Maybe you can put a name on it: annoyance, irritation, aggravation. It's not an emotion, but I sometimes say I'm aggravated. That means I'm upset and irritated. And how strong is it? Are you, in tapping, we always rate the intensity of the emotion on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being I'm not triggered, I'm cool, I don't feel it. 10, it's like it's unbearable, I'm going to slap someone. In that case, I'm talking about irritation, of course. It's overwhelming. So how strong is your emotion? And once you have that already in check, when you put it on paper, because it will help you become more aware of it. And when we're more aware of it, we can intervene during or even before it happens. And that's why I'm going to have this EFT tapping session on Friday, because then we are not only going to explain it and understanding it at an intellectual level, but we're going to act and intervene on our nervous system, so you can start being way less triggered even if nothing changes. And I want to remind you, when you're triggered, when you're irritated, when you're angry, and you feel threatened because you think something like they're lazy or they don't listen to my rules, they don't care about what I'm saying, etc., your alert system, your stress center in your brain is going on fight, flight, or freeze response. And then you do not have access to your full brain, to your full resourcefulness to find a solution to the problem. So that too adds an internal oil to the fire, because instead of being more conscious, creative, analytical, you're going to be more reactive, and that's not going to go well. So become aware of how you react and start affirming, even, because affirmations work very well. I am now letting go of my reaction of irritation regarding that matter. I'll find another way. And now consider, is it a realistic expectation? Remember that they're teenagers. Remember that they forget in 5 minutes what you just asked from them. Remember that their brain is not completely developed. All those factors, plus the fact that, for example, in my house, I have 2 kids who have ADHD. One is diagnosed, the other one is obvious. They forget. So if you get irritated every single time, they even can get hurt maybe emotionally because you get upset when they have no control. Instead of seeing, okay, what's going on? Let's sit. Let's see, is it something that we can solve together? Is there some way I can help you? You can even ask them, how can I help you? Remember, how can I help you motivate yourself to do it? Maybe they're not motivated because there are 20,000 things that are way more interesting than taking the trash out or vacuuming their room. And maybe they don't even see it. You know, there's I have one of my kids can live in a total mess until she's tired of it, she gets up and she does a deep cleaning. So we don't have the same sensitivity, and we don't need to attach some meaning that is our own meaning to what's happening when it's not even the case with them. And like I mentioned, some stuff will add oil to the fire. So we talked about the fight or flight state and reaction in the brain, that we won't be able to think rationally. But there are stuff that you may be doing with your teen that add oil to the fire, and that makes them even defiant and wanting to not do it at the same time. Something like, let's say you go to them and you say, you didn't take the trash out, and it's the same thing as last month when I asked you to help me in the garden and you didn't do it, and you mix stuff that have nothing to do with it. In your mind it does, but to them it's aggravating, and it makes them even maybe more mad or maybe more rebellious and defiant, and maybe they didn't do it on purpose, but maybe now they actually don't want to do it because of that. They get mad. Another thing that I've seen in Facebook groups when we vent is the comparison between siblings. That's, if there is one thing I would like you to remember, it is a big no-no. Big, huge, humongous. For 2 reasons. Because first, they are not their siblings, and it can make them feel less than. It can make them think that you love their sibling more. And it adds also some kind of negative aspect in your mind when you compare kids like that. And they can feel that they don't measure up, and you, even if you don't say it, your energy, your body language, the way you're going to relate to your different kids is going to say it, even if you don't openly say the words. So that's a big no-no. Remember, every kid is different. You are different from your siblings if you have siblings. How would you like if somebody was comparing you to someone? It's not fun. Comparison, even when we do it to ourselves in our own mind, is a joy killer, is a self-confidence killer. No comparison. That's a recipe for suffering, for pain, for feeling inadequate, etc., etc. So really refrain from comparing them. Some of your teens have certain aspects that are easier in certain areas, and others have others. Focus on them. Do not go anywhere else, and focus on, if there was one thing, let's say you first of all, putting a list on the fridge is really unrealistic because they won't go there. And we know that the brain gets used to seeing things, and after 2 days they won't see it. But if you know that you may be disappointed, be ready for it. Prepare yourself for it not to be done, and for it not to be the end of the world. Tell yourself over and over, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean anything about their future, that they're going to be lazy and their life is going to be crappy. And you know how we can go into negative black and white scenarios with that. It's not such a big deal. And prepare yourself to remember, you are the mom. You are supposed to be more mature. You are here to educate. I was reading a book recently about discipline, and they were reminding that discipline comes from disciple in English. And it means to learn. We are here. Our main purpose, of course, to protect them, but even that we can't do 100%. Our goal is to educate them, to give them tools for life. So if we have to repeat 100 times until it sinks in, then we have to repeat 100 times. And resisting what is not only a pity, because you will allocate some energy into the resistance that you could allocate to the solution, and it will only make you suffer when you could be approaching it with more peace of mind and it wouldn't disturb you that much. So that's what I want to remind you. We are the mom. We may have to repeat 100 times, and this is the nature of the beast. And I'm not saying that your kid is a beast, but I love this expression because when I first came to America, I was working somewhere, and it was with someone who had a business, and one client didn't show up, and he just said, "Oh, well, this is business. This is the nature of the beast. Sometimes clients don't show up, and it's not a big deal." So raising kids means you're going to have to repeat. Not a big deal. Doesn't mean anything about you, doesn't mean anything about them. It's just the nature of the business. So I hope it helps, and don't forget to join us this Friday afternoon around 3 o'clock Pacific time in the Facebook group, Single Moms Doing It All, and I'll put the link into the description of this episode if you want to make it easier for you. And I really look forward to connecting with you live on Facebook. So have a wonderful day. In fact, let go of your expectation. And instead of expectation, adopt curiosity or intend to be curious. That's way more fun, and it adds variety. Because if everything was always the same, we would be bored. Have a wonderful, expectation-less day. Bye for now. Being a single mom can be challenging, but you don't have to face it alone. Join our community at facebook.com/groups/single and doing it all, and receive tools, tips, and free group coaching. And if you like this podcast, please review and rate us on iTunes. I would really appreciate it.